Okay, folks, it's 2 o'clock, so I'd like to welcome you all to the NAJC webinar on dementia. We're very, very grateful to the Southerton Foundation on Aging for funding this and for allowing us to present this webinar to all of you. It's going to be recorded, so anybody can come back. We'll send the links out after the session is over. Please do. Please come back. Reminder, we have another session next week, which will be the last session, and that will be with Dr. Gaston and with Rabbi Dale Friedman, and they're going to be talking about how we can best deal with advanced directives and what we want to do with our lives and how we want to live our lives. So, welcome to the webinar. I was very, very grateful to the National Association of Catholic Chaplains when I was at their conference a couple of months ago in Buffalo. I took one of the workshops by Emily, it was presented by Emily Southerton, who's with us today. It's called Spirit Alive. Spirit Alive is a project of Phoebe Ministries. They're out of Pennsylvania, out of Allentown, Pennsylvania. Spirit Alive is a phenomenally wonderful hands-on program. It's really, while it was designed by Phoebe Ministries, which is a Catholic entity, it has many, many components and values that really run across the board. They are interdenominational, and there are many that are really Jewish specific. So it's really a hands-on program, great things that you'll be able to do. And Emily, I'm sure will tell you at the end how you guys can get involved with your entities and your agencies if you really want to work hands-on with the people with dementia and their families. So at this time, it gives me great pleasure to turn this over to Emily, who will run us through this whole workshop. Emily, thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Thanks for inviting me to be here. I began with Phoebe in 2019. And I want to just share that Phoebe Ministries began by the United Church of Christ in 1903. It was named by Phoebe Deaconess Home. At the time, it was named Phoebe Deaconess Home, but since then, it's built 5 campuses that offer a variety of services, ranging from long-term living skill to skilled care, personal care, and dementia care. So with that, we're going to open our PowerPoint and our slides. And this, usually when I offer this presentation, it's really interactive. I often, for the first 30 minutes, invite you to participate in what a Spirit Alive group would be like on the unit. And that's what Mo experienced at the National Association of Catholic Chaplains. But because we're a webinar, I'm going to give you a little bit more of the history, the pilot study, the research that was behind Spirit Alive and how it became a part of our program here, and then a little bit of the consultation services that we do, what you might see if you were to bring the training to your facility. It is a copyrighted program, so we offer training and then you can purchase the scripts. So anyways, with that, I'm going to start by I shared a little bit about who I am. I'm the associate chaplain. We have 5 campuses, and so there's many of us chaplains and then facilitators on each campus leading Spirit Alive. We've partnered with other organizations to be able to offer them resources to experience Spirit Alive and to bring it to their campus. So now that you've gotten to know me a little bit, we're going to advance to the next slide. And there's a poll here. Like I said, usually we're highly interactive with Spirit Alive. It's all hands-on usually. So because we're a webinar format, I'm going to invite you to take this poll. And then at the end, Allison's going to share our results. So take a minute to weigh in. The question is, are you currently working in a continuing care retirement community or a skilled care facility? All right, so it looks like we have several people who said yes. you should be able to see those results too. So this presentation is geared towards folks who might be working within a facility, but I'm hoping that along the way you'll be able to pick up things that even if you're not working in a skilled care facility or a continuing care retirement community, I'm hoping that there's some things that you can add to your toolbox from this webinar. So it is on dementia. I've divided our time. This is how I hope our time will go. So first, as best we can, I'm going to invite you to experience Spirit Alive, explore the method and tools for group facilitation that lend themselves to inclusive pastoral care. Then next, we're going to apply the history, a conceptual overview of Spirit Alive, unearthing an approach to spiritual care that promotes openness, inclusivity, diversity, religion, gender, cognitive impairment. It accounts for maybe experiences that a normal traditional worship service might not be reaching. And then the last part of how I hope to spend our time is to discuss. There'll be plenty of time for question and answers at the end, but as we go along, if you have a question, feel free to field it, and Mo will be able to address it and raise it to our attention. So we're gonna spend some time discussing too just how Spirit Alive is applicable, how it meets the needs of folks with dementia, and what their needs might be, their spiritual needs, and how we might be able to meet those needs. So to define kind of what Spirit Alive is, Spirit Alive is an innovative model. I mentioned it's built on a pilot study. It's a model of spiritual support that integrates best practices in dementia care with insights and practices from pastoral care and spiritual direction. So it's founded both upon spiritual direction and pastoral care practices to allow for spiritual support. Next slide. All right, this video, you can find this video on YouTube by searching for Phoebe Ministries Spirit Alive. This video will give you a little bit of, as best we can, offer you through this webinar, a way to experience what Spirit Alive is. You're going to see and hear kind of some of the props that we use. So we use a lot of tactile things that you can touch, you can interact with. And so when you watch this video, you're going to see the way the facilitators might invite somebody to put on a shawl when we're talking about Joseph and the coat of many colors. Or they might invite somebody to hold the doll and to kind of reminisce with the doll. You'll also see on this video, you'll see some of the people who are behind creating Spirit Alive, especially our regional director, Scott Brooks Cope. So as you watch this video, I'm just going to invite you to notice the ways that leading a group might be less of focus on auditory or on conversation, but more on experience. Allison, would you play our video?
Spirit Alive is a way of giving spiritual care to people who might have cognitive impairments, and it's based in a Montessori method. It uses all the senses, uses multimodalities like art, music, all kinds of ways to reach people where they're at. So just because you have cognitive impairments, we shouldn't ignore you. Nor should we put you in a room with 50 other people and expect you to be able to pay attention when we do a worship service.
And so Spirit Alive is innovative in the fact that we do have smaller groups. And because our groups are smaller, we're able to interact with each resident. We're able to make them feel at home, feel loved, also feel seen. It's also innovative because we're actually looking at what dementia is and gearing our services particularly to people with mid to late stage dementia.
We can meet these individuals one-to-one and make an immediate connection with them. And we get to know who they are, so then we can work on their well-being with them to make their life better, or at least to live in the way they want to live and respect that.
With Spirit Alive, it's not just chaplains that are leading these services. We have community volunteers that are helping us. We have community life staff that helps us. Our nursing staff helps us to identify residents that would benefit from these Spirit Alive groups. Spirit Alive really is an interdisciplinary approach because everybody has to come together to make sure that this program is what it needs to be.
I really love Spirit Alive and the opportunity to be with people in a very personal way, really allowing people the space, the time, the opportunity to share. Often Spirit Alive is happening in settings where people don't remember so much from day to day, week to week, but in the moment and for possibly the rest of the day, what happens in a Spirit Alive session can bring them some feelings of peace and comfort.
It's a multi-sensory experience. It's an experience that allows our residents to connect with God, connect with others, and also to connect with themselves.
We have pictures that we show them and we ask them what they see or what's important to them. We have the statue of Jesus or angels that they can feel and touch. We use puppets, which become fun for them. With Noah and the Ark, we actually pick up the animals and put them in the Ark. So every single person does get involved.
We see people being calmer. We see them responding. We see them coming forth to those kind of visual presentations. And especially the music, too. You'll see people who may not be able to be very verbal, but when you get to the songs, they know every word and they sing it. It's just incredible to watch.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. So what we found is in mid to late stage dementia, when you begin to sing these songs of their youth, they remember those songs because there's an emotional connection that has been made maybe in childhood. It's like they're lodged in that treasure box in the mind and allows that resident to connect with their faith of their past and their faith of their present.
I have witnessed women and men both sitting in a Spirit Alive session, not able to verbalize what they're thinking or feeling. But we start singing Jesus Loves Me, Amazing Grace, and even someone with their eyes closed, I have seen mouthing the words, witnessing the remembering, the meaning, occasionally seeing the tears that are brought out. To me, that is one of the most powerful pieces of Spirit Alive.
The first time that I took my mom to Spirit Alive, I wasn't even aware of what it was, and of course my mom wasn't either. But it turned out to be a wonderful experience because it's very personal, it's hands-on. They ask everyone individually how they feel about certain things, so I knew it was going to be a good match. And we really enjoy experiencing Spirit Alive with my mom because we feel then we're part of the activities that happen at the gardens. And it's just been a great bonding thing for the whole family.
Sometimes when residents first come into this service, they might be tired or just not know where they are. But after that 45-minute session, there seems to be a lightness that comes over them. There's some residents that during the services, they're actually engaging with one another. They might actually reach out to another resident and hold their hand. And you might not see them doing that on the unit, just sitting by themselves.
Physical touch is so important. One resident said, you know, with Spirit Alive, it's different because you want to, and we know we are loved and cared for.
I'm proud that we've been able to touch so many lives within our Phoebe system with Spirit Alive, that we have seen the Spirit literally alive in people that many other people might walk by or might ignore, that we haven't. We've given them love, we've given them care through this program and allowed their faith to have a way of expressing itself.
I'm proud of the fact that we offer Spirit Alive and that we do give people the opportunity to tap into times of their lives that were really relevant and can still be relevant if we give them the opportunity to share.
If you talk to any facilitator, they would tell you that they get just as much out of these worship services as we're hoping our residents do.
Again and again, we receive blessings from the responses of our residents, and we see them come alive, and we see their joy which is just incredible.
The whole situation is rewarding because you know that people are here that care about her. It's faith-based, and they just do everything that they possibly can, both Spirit Alive and every other aspect of Phoebe, to make people feel like they're still part of this world.
All right, our next slide is going to be a poll. So this poll here is trying to kind of offer engagement. So it says, do you currently offer groups that are interactive and use sensory props? Was this a video that was maybe something new, or have you offered groups before and use props? I'm going to invite you to weigh in and vote. Okay, so for some of you, this might be new, thinking about props, or maybe leading groups is not something you might regularly do. For those of you who have engaged and used props or anything related to the senses, maybe there'll be some different strategies or tools that we can move forward with. But these are just some kind of metrics to be able to see where we're at. Let's see what the next slide is. Thank you. So in the video, they kind of shared how Spirit Alive is important because it invites people to be able to experience, to still live into their faith story. And that's because it starts with the belief that individuals with dementia are spiritually active and that God is working through them. Spirit Alive is also important because it's an alternative approach to spiritual care that enters an individual's experience and makes theology contextual. Reminds me of, it makes theology a way of interacting, of playing, of being able to kind of sense what's going on spiritually with feelings, with the emotions, with play. So it makes theology contextual rather than just theoretical. Spirit Alive is also important because recent data from the National Institute on Health cites that current dementia research reports that 30% of people admitted to skilled care nursing have moderate to severe cognitive impairment. So it's important that we find creative ways to keep meeting their needs. And it might not be traditional pastoral approaches. It might not be traditional worship services that rely on heavy auditory or heavy mind conceptual thinking. So that's the last point there, that perhaps most traditional pastoral care approaches, including worship, may not effectively engage and support the well-being of individuals with dementia. Next slide. This quote is to define what spirituality is. When we're talking about spirituality, there's a million different ideas of what spirituality might be. And I think Stephen Sapp and James Elroy really kind of sum up that spirituality is a sense of connectedness. The quote says, quote, "That which gives one a sense of connectedness to oneself, to others, to the natural world, and to that which transcends all these categories, commonly called the sacred and the divine of God. Spirituality, therefore, is often associated with questions about meaning and purpose in human existence." In the next slide, I have here, when we talk about connection and spirituality, I often think about like the quote says, connection in 4 different quadrants: connecting with self, connecting with others, connecting with nature, and connecting with God. So when we think about spirituality, when we think about connection, we might be asking these questions of, how can we get to know an individual with dementia, and how can they be known as an individual, not as a person with dementia, but as who their life story is. It's drawing awareness to an individual's life story, perhaps doing life story reviews. And most importantly, in connecting with self, it's validating the feelings that a person might be experiencing. Oftentimes, even people with dementia know what feeling they are experiencing. They might not be able to easily express it, but I'm sure that they are able to feel the same feelings that you or I feel. So connecting with self is an important part of spirituality. Connecting with others in terms of feeling love or giving love, in terms of having a sense of belonging, or being able to find ways that someone living with dementia can still give to others. It could include communicating with others, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, and also connecting with others in terms of a group and offering Spirit Alive. The video shared that sometimes people were able to connect with each other within the group in a way that they couldn't connect by just sitting on the unit together. In terms of connecting with nature, oftentimes this includes finding meaning or purpose in nature and the change of the seasons, experiencing creation. When I lead a group, a Spirit Alive group, and we talk about the seasons, a lot of times I'll bring in real leaves so that they can taste, they can touch, they can interact with the leaf, smell it. So experiencing creation, the change of the seasons. And this connects with God too, participating in ritual or prayer or familiar hymns. This was mentioned in the video that sometimes a hymn might be able to allow somebody that could maybe not verbally speak, allow them to mouth the words because they had known that hymn from a time that they were young. And hopefully, in terms of connecting with God, that they might find a way to feel loved by God, recognizing that God is present even amidst dementia. I think that's the bottom line here that I'm going to keep underlining. We all, being spiritual caregivers, we all realize that God is present even amidst dementia. It might take some work on our end to figure out how to meet God, or how to meet God within them, or how to be present to them. But this is how, when I think about spirituality, I think about the connecting with self, connecting with others, connecting with nature, and connecting with God as kind of the 4 anchors to spirituality. You might be familiar with Dale Friedman's work, and I think I heard that you had a previous webinar session where she spoke, and she's coming again. So this paper, Seeking the Solemn, Making Sense of Dementia, might be very familiar to you. 2 of the quotes that I pulled from that reading that I think really ground the perspective of Spirit Alive is the recognition that God created humanity in God's own image, right? That's scriptural too, that even if we have folks with dementia, or if we know of folks with dementia, or we might experience that ourselves one day, that there's still God's image within them. And then another quote that Dale Friedman referenced from Stephen Sapp was, it just might be, in order for us to see God in another, or to connect with God within the other, we might need to see as God sees. We might need to find that divine spark within. Next quote. Okay. Now kind of giving a little bit of the context of what the underpinnings are of Spirit Alive, I'm going to explain the pilot study, how the history of Spirit Alive unfolded, and kind of continue to unpack what it might look like, what the methods are, and what it might mean. Next slide. Spirit Alive began from Phoebe's mission statements. The inspiration of Spirit Alive stemmed from Phoebe's mission, which is a community of faith called by God to enrich the lives of our seniors, their families, and the communities we serve. If you noticed in the video, oftentimes we invite family to participate in Spirit Alive with the resident. And so it allows for us to get to know more of the person's story and allow kind of a communicative way of experiencing community and family systems. So it's not just the residents that often participate, it's families, it's facilitators, or people who are involved within the community, whether they live in independent living and maybe had a husband or wife who had dementia and really benefited from Spirit Alive. We incorporate, it's the best way to say it is it's a community approach to caring for each other. And then that feeds into the hope for Spirit Alive, which emerged from the desire to engage individuals with dementia that face challenges with traditional faith services. So like I mentioned before, this means maybe we are approaching it in a different way than trying to rely just on the auditory and the listening and using the imagination, the cognitive abilities. Maybe we're trying to incorporate the whole body. And so both those themes really have started Spirit Alive and kind of keep it growing, trying new ways to innovate, offering groups and meeting people where they're at. Okay, next slide. So a little bit about the pilot study that was done here at Phoebe. In 2014, Dr. Ben Mass, a psychologist and gerontologist at the University of Louisville, and other two former CPE students at Phoebe Ministries at that time, they conducted research and compiled observable data that showed recipients' attention, their spiritual wellness, their mood, specifically during Spirit Alive and traditional worship services. So they show they took two groups and they showed kind of where the recipients are more engaged, where they're feeling like their faith is more attended to, or they feel more like they're participants of their faith. So they took two different groups, a tradition, and focused on how traditional worship service responded to those needs, and then how a Spirit Alive led worship service responded to those needs. The next slide. So here are some of the observable data from that research. The Spirit Alive is in the blue and the traditional worship is in the red. At the bottom here, you can see the positive engagement, whether people were sleeping, and then positive emotion. And so they measured these throughout different consecutive periods, and they found that on average, Spirit Alive, because it was more interactive, people were sleeping less. They felt more, there was more positive emotion. They were shown pictures and asked whether the picture, there was a picture of God and closeness, depicting closeness with God, or a picture of emotion and depicting positive emotion. And they were able to ask the resident to point to which one they felt met their feeling in that moment. And then measuring positive engagement, just noticing, are people falling asleep less? Are they maybe responding more? Are they responding less? So that was one of the data that came from this pilot study. And then if you could advance the slide. This explains a little bit more of the method. So they created two groups. Each group was observed prior to attending any service, and then while attending two types of services, that being the Spirit Alive worship and the traditional worship. After the worship service, group members were shown pictograms and asked to share if they felt connected or closer with God, if they felt loved or they felt valued by others. So that goes back to that 4-quadrant of spirituality: connectedness with God, connected with others, connected with self, and connected in feeling love or nature. And then the last part is kind of more the conclusion. Group members felt more connected to their faith community, to their self, to God, while participating in Spirit Alive. Next slide. This is another way of looking at the data. So when they did the pilot study, they measured also people who were not in service. So people who, for one reason or another, did not go to either of the services. And they found still that Spirit Alive, when talking about connection to others or spirituality with God, that it was higher. And then if you can advance, Allison, to the next slide. And these are the other 2 parts of the quadrant. So loved by God and valued by others. Okay. So the conclusion of the pilot study was that traditional care practices may not reach residents in mid or late stage dementia who present with increasing confusion, difficulty speaking, or understanding verbal communication, especially when there's loss of memory or behavioral challenges. Oftentimes, when there is loss of memory, sometimes talking about something, you might be very well aware that talking about something, somebody might not be able to access that memory, but showing them the prop or allowing them to touch something instantly sparks a memory or instantly sparks something that they're led to share. The pilot study also explored large group services and how they might be overwhelming. So before Spirit Alive was started here at Phoebe, worship services were like packed, where people would come, 20, 40, 50 people would pack into the church or the worship center, and it was hot. And so naturally, when it was all based on like auditory listening and imagining, but not as much on using, being able to experience or to be a part of the worship service in the same way that they weren't able to do or to participate. And so large group services, they found to be maybe overwhelming to folks who have dementia. And so the solution was maybe limiting the group to 6 or 7. Currently, when we offer Spirit Alive, we try to cap it at 8. And then we have different facilitators that will lead one group, like an A group, and then 8 other residents will be in a B group, and 8 other residents will be in a C group. And so that way, there's the ability for each group member to be able to feel like they have a chance to share, but also to be able to feel like that the rhythm is slow enough, that they're not kind of holding somebody up by slowing down and sharing their story. So large group services were also overwhelming. And so that's why we opt to create a small group that creates trust and familiarity, allowing the same residents to come back each time to the worship service or to the group, the Spirit Alive group. That creates a sense of trust, a sense of familiarity. And I've personally seen when I've led Spirit Alive groups that that the group will recognize, like, oh yeah, this is what we do. They might not be able to call it Spirit Alive, or they might not recognize like that this is Spirit Alive, but they recognize each other's faces. They have a familiarity that, like, oh yeah, this is what we do Thursday mornings. We gather together. We start by singing a hymn together that's familiar, that they would all know. And then we like listen to a story, but the story is not only a big faith story from maybe scripture, but it's also a faith story that they can share their own, something that maybe interacts with their own life story. And I've seen times when I've led this group that maybe somebody shared something very tearful, and that person next to them reaches over and just says, it's okay, I've been there too, or I understand what you're going through. And so that's what I'm talking about when it's a smaller group. There's trust, there's familiarity, but there's also vulnerability. All right, next slide. Okay, so a poll question. Time to hear your thoughts on what are spiritual needs of individuals living with dementia. We'll allow some time. There's no wrong answer here. It's just to kind of see what you think, where you think in your experiences the needs of individuals are. Awesome. Yeah, I would agree with all of the above: physical touch, connection, sensory engagement, being able to feel like you have an active role in not only what your faith is and your faith story, but in the story that's being led. So all of the above. All right. So when we try to make sense of dementia and the need for deep connection, for me, what comes to mind is the awareness that every human being, regardless of cognitive ability, needs spiritual resources to help them with painful wounds of grief, guilt, transition, resentment, unforgiveness, self-rejection, and shame. Every human also needs spiritual resources to deepen their experience of trust, self-esteem, hope, joy, love, and life. So in a nutshell, that's what I see we're trying to do as spiritual care practitioners. We're trying to find ways to heal, to attend to help folks, even who have dementia, to experience kind of reconnection, or the ability to trust and find self-esteem, the hope, the joy, and the love. And in order to do this, we might need to step back and say, what are the basics of dementia? How do we have good spiritual care? And how does knowing some of the basics inform our spiritual care? So that's what we're going to do now. I'm not going to go as in depth as I do with our training, but I want to just kind of cover the nuts and bolts in case folks might not be familiar as much with dementia. Maybe folks in this webinar don't every day go on to a dementia unit. So here's a chance to kind of engage and learn a little bit. So this quote here is from Dale Friedman, Seeking the Selam, Making Sense of Dementia. It says, when you cannot remember the past and cannot conceive of the future, what are you left with is the present moment. What you are left with is the present moment. That's how I see interactions with dementia, is the focus on the present moment and what's happening here and now. How are folks feeling here and now? If we were to define dementia, the way I would do it is kind of like the umbrella here on the right, where dementia is an umbrella term for a loss of memory and other thinking abilities serve enough to interfere with daily life. So under the umbrella of dementia, there's Alzheimer's, there's vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal dementia, and others, including Huntington's. This pictogram, I really think, kind of lays out what dementia is in a definition. And then on the left here on the slide, it says dementia results from a variety of diseases and injuries that primarily or secondarily affect the brain. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia and may contribute to 60 to 70% of cases. the World Health Organization has cited that currently more than 55 million people live with dementia worldwide, and there are nearly 10 million new cases every year. A lot of cases. That's so important for us to keep thinking creatively about how we can meet the needs of folks. So I'm going to just briefly kind of share the stages, the basic stages of the anatomy of dementia. There's mild dementia, and then there's severe dementia. Mild dementia is where the brain regions related to memory, thinking, and planning, they develop plaques and tangles, which make it hard for the elasticity of the brain to be able to create connections across the brain. So the plaques and tangles spread and are involved with often inhibit the ability to speak or understand speech. So both language or perhaps auditory, the actual loss of hearing can also complicate things, but individuals may also experience change in personality, in behavior, and have troubles recognizing friends or family members. That's kind of the beginning or the onset, the mild stage. It might be hard for individuals in the mild stage to be able to take care of themselves. It might be hard for them to be able to remember like a family or a friend, their name or exactly where they are. So in some ways, when this translates to spiritual care, it might be hard for them to voice or remember the name of a song, but the instant we start singing it as a group, they would probably know every lyric or every word to the song. All right, the next slide. In this next slide, this is what might be the second stage or advanced dementia. In advanced dementia, most of the brain is severely damaged. Most of the cortex is seriously damaged, and the brain size may shrink dramatically due to cell death. Individuals may lose their ability to communicate or care for themselves. So in the pictogram on the left, often they think the hippocampus is the first part, maybe, or maybe it's equally affected, but eventually the plaques and the tangles spread throughout the brain, and it becomes harder to communicate. And if you look at the picture, maybe the normal size of the brain's on the left, and somebody with Alzheimer's has maybe a brain that looks more like the brain on the right. And then I'll just point out that severe advanced dementia, maybe the plaques and tangles are now throughout the whole brain. All right, next slide. So a question is, well, what still remains? How can we still meet the individual, show up, or find a way to interact and engage in a way that's meaningful to them? In mid-stage dementia, individuals can still hold social conversations. And that's why a format like Spirit Alive, where it's highly interactive, allows somebody to talk or to interact, to share their story, to taste, touch, smell, use the senses, is really important. Access to remote memories stay intact until later stages. We also know that there are still moments of insight or wisdom. You might find that in the morning, a particular resident does really well with recalling things, but towards the afternoon, maybe things become more fuzzy, or maybe somebody just has this instant burst of wisdom or story that they share, when on a normal basis, they might not do that. Another important part of what still remains is that the emotions are still intact, especially throughout each stage of dementia. So this would mean that someone could still express, maybe with body language, maybe with verbal cues of how they're feeling in that moment when asked. And as an individual progresses, they may not be able to recall remote memories, but rather they live in the moment that goes back to the quote about living in the moment. And we have the ability to be able to experience that moment with them. And the last point here is that the spiritual life of a person with dementia, it still remains. It's this grounding or understanding that even people with dementia are still spiritually active, still searching for meaning, connection, purpose. So that's where Spirit Alive really tries to meet people. All right, next slide. And how we meet people is by trying to use this metaphor of opening a treasure box. If you were to imagine this metaphor where the treasure inside is the person's memories, their stories, their personality, what we try to do is really open that treasure box by asking a person about their life story. Maybe if we can't access it from the person themselves, then we ask family members. We do a life review. In our training, we often practice life reviews or go over what a life review would entail and how to be able to use life reviews to then tailor to the stories from a spiritual tradition or religious tradition or someone's own life story. We also use personal items that may help tell their story. So that's like being able to use an item to be able to locate a memory or to be able to tap into a memory. It's why maybe props really help people to be able to share something that just pops into their mind. And of course, with Spirit Alive, we weave their story into interactions and care. So often we weave a person's story into the great life story. When we do Joseph in the Coat of Many Colors, we invite people to actually put on the coat, the shawl. We have usually a shawl for each person, and we invite them to pick out which one they like the best and then to wear it. And when we do that, we're able to tap into maybe someone's personal experience. This one time when I led the group, a member shared that she always had wanted a new coat, but at the time that she was living and with the family, things were very tight. And so when she finally had her own job and was able to go out and buy her own coat, it made so much meaning for her. And so by her putting on the shawl, the coat, it really reminded her of that purpose, that sense of meaning from when she started her first job. And that goes to the next bullet point of being open to the lessons that come from their life. So by being open to one person's experience, we're able to get a broad sense of what else has happened in their life, what their life story is. We explore emotionally laden experiences. So it goes back to tapping into the emotions, to experiencing what a person might be experiencing in the moment or might have experienced through their life story. All right, that is the metaphor of the treasure chest. Now, Spirit Alive was also started. We looked at the dementia care best practices, and then later we built part of those into the Spirit Alive building blocks. But for some context, the dementia care best practices are recognizing that each person needs person-centered care. So they might have their own life story that we need to tap into. They might have a way that they like to communicate or relationships that are more important or that are close to them that we need to be aware of. Behavior management is another part of dementia care best practices. Oftentimes when we lead trainings, we encourage leaders to remember that a TV and a facilitator in the same room might be competing for attention, that we need to be aware of things that might trigger or might really cause emotional disturbance for a resident. Maybe there was a history of like a life history that would need to be aware of. So Behavioral management, knowing how a person behaves or how they might behave, is something that is part of the dementia care best practices. Also, so environmental modifications, I talked about the TV, not competing for like the auditory attention or visual attention. Life review is another big part. I mentioned that we do some training around life reviews and how to incorporate and get a whole story of an individual so that we can better understand where their behavior might be coming from, or where a relationship might be stressed or strong or broken. And then the last part of dementia care best practices is Montessori-based activities. And that includes the tactile, the engagement. So these are the best practices. And then this next slide, if you could advance to the next slide, these are our Spirit Alive building blocks, or our components. So we start with the knowledge of the disease. So in our training, we share a little bit about maybe what happens in the brain for people who might not have any experience with caring for folks with dementia. And then we share about the Montessori-based interactions and Maria Montessori's work and how it really informs spiritual care too. Taking into account the individual's life story, doing a life story assessment as part of our training. And then the great faith stories. So scripture, religious, spiritual tradition, and how those great faith stories weave in to allow somebody to share how their faith story is a part of the great faith story. Group facilitation is another building block of Spirit Alive. And this is, at our campuses, we often, I mentioned earlier, have group facilitators from the community. So whether they had a spouse in independent living that had dementia, or whether they took care of their mom or somebody, we open that up for folks to be able to volunteer their time to be group facilitators. We also train a lot of our community life staff. It was mentioned in the video that community life staff are always working maybe more towards the direction of activities, but they might take these principles and be able to apply them to their work too. And then social workers or chaplains are usually retired chaplains. We have several retired chaplains who are group facilitators. And then the last building block is the spiritual direction framework, which is an understanding that God is present, working through all of the encounter, working through the individual, and that in spiritual direction, you kind of wonder what's going on with this individual, or what's happening, or how is God present in this individual. And so it's using the wonder as kind of cueing and giving guidance for what's happening with folks. So these are the building blocks of how we form Spirit Alive and the different components. And in our training that we do, we offer more in-depth lessons on them, but this is just an overview for that. All right, the next slide. This is continued building blocks, mentioning that Spirit Alive is based upon the works of Maria Montessori, recognizing that learning takes place best through experience. This is the part of action and reflection. By allowing somebody to put on that coat of many colors, then they are able to reflect about their time they first had a job and how it was when they first bought their own coat. The underlying principles and the methods that have been adapted by Cameron Camp for work with individuals with dementia. I think I talked about, I didn't have the right words of space retrieval theory, but that idea where you give somebody something, an object that might remind them or allow them to access a memory. So if you maybe give them a doll with a coat of many colors, they might remember their first coat that they put on, or the first coat that somebody gave them, or it might take them to a whole different memory. a time of getting their first doll, or what it's like to hold Joseph, a scripture passage that we often talk about, but we don't engage. So that's Cameron Camp's work. Some background, if you don't know Cameron Camp, he's a gerontologist, and his work has impacted the rehabilitation for folks with severe cognitive disability, especially those with Alzheimer's, and that's where his space retrieval theory came from. He, in 2016, came to Phoebe for the Phoebe Institute on Aging, the spring conference, and that's where he began to help work with us on the Spirit Alive building blocks and principles. And then the last point is just to increase engagement by drawing upon strengths and interests. That's the spiritual care framework of continually finding engagement and then drawing upon those strengths and interests, using curiosity and wonder to find where it will take you. Okay, next slide. All right, so I've kind of shared a lot of the history in the pilot study. I've shared about the principles. Now I want to share about the general structure of what a Spirit Alive group would look like. Because we're in a webinar, I don't have a chance to be able to actually show you and for you to experience a Spirit Alive. So what I've done instead is I've kind of broken apart what a usual script would look like, different components that you would find in a script or in our training day. Oftentimes we try to follow the same structure because it creates familiarity. It creates a sense of trust of the residents who are participating in Spirit Alive. They kind of have a rhythm or a know of what the group is going to look like, how it will start, and how it will end. So an opening includes welcoming residents, setting a space using space settings like an altarpiece, a tablecloth, perhaps electric candles, flowers. Oftentimes that can be a way for them to smell and to really begin to wonder, are those real flowers? Are they fake flowers? A centerpiece or a central prop. So for Joseph in the Coat of Many Colors, this would be my central prop. And I would probably have them sitting out so people could see and begin to start when they get there, begin to start wondering what's going on, or what are we going to talk about today? Who's going to be able to experience? What are they going to be able to experience? And then I would introduce the story. So I'd read the text in the scripture, talk about the theme. I would introduce the props. I would invite participants to use senses to engage the props. And then we would transition between faith story and individual story. And that is constantly happening within a Spirit Alive group. There's constantly maybe a little bit of this sharing of the big story of Joseph in the Coat of Many Colors. And then it might instantly prompt somebody to think, oh, it reminds me of that time. And then they share. So going around with each individual and introducing the prop to each individual. That's part of the introduction of the story. And then the storytelling, present props, use wondering statements, use guided meditation. We have this beautiful script on creation, and there's this part I love about the guided meditation where there's a part of the guided meditation where you turn on this music maker that sounds like nature, and it sounds like a waterfall. And it's a way to allow people to really enter into nature, to enter into a guided meditation by using hearing and senses that are just really robust. Art activity is another way for storytelling. Oftentimes a whiteboard with maybe allowing people to draw, to incorporate art, skill, talent. Movement prayers are a big thing too. It's incorporating movement while using a prayer. And then reading texts in scripture, an invitation to share stories. So all along you're inviting people, giving like ample opportunity of ways to connect, ways for them to share their story while you're sharing the big faith story too. And then of course the sharing of feelings too, because the feelings are there and it's a way of trying to find how to connect and share those, allowing those people to share the feelings. And then the closing ritual, what a general Spirit Alive script would look like, would be singing a familiar hymn, something that all the members of the group would know, or a poem or a prayer, thanking residents for coming and following up with residents and family. So that's kind of a general flow of what a Spirit Alive group would look like. Okay. And I mentioned scripts. Our students have created several scripts, our CPE students, all from their faith tradition, all from different backgrounds. Some of the scripts that kind of came to mind as I was preparing this presentation were the scripts on change of seasons, these scripts that are listed here, prayer, talking with the sacred, the potter and the clay, where we use real pottery or real clay that they can interact with, the lion and the mouse, the story of angels, shepherds, and kings, serving and Veterans Day, Ruth and Naomi, Father Abraham, God keeps his promise, the creation story. I shared a little bit about that meditation that I just really love, the use of the nature sounds in the meditation. Creating with the Spirit, allowing residents to use their creativity to show where the Spirit is. Joseph and the Coat of Many Colors, kind of the one I've been talking about a great deal today. Friendship, Thanksgiving, motherhood, walking with the Lord. And there's many more too. These are just a few that have come to mind. But when we do our training, we also share scripts. That's part of the fee. So there's always new, the Spirit's always moving. There's always new scripts coming to be, especially with the help of CPE students, and they're just the diverse background. So that's just kind of an overview of what some of the script themes are. As we're kind of coming towards the close, the outcomes of using Spirit Alive, I can say for our campus, I've seen how care recipients are accompanied even if they cannot express themselves. I can see how residents engage because of the tactile and interactive nature of Spirit Alive. You just can't help holding yourself back, even as a facilitator. You can't help holding yourself back from just being engaged, being a part of the story of Spirit Alive and how it emerges in each group. Family members have shared that they notice their mother or father has an increased mood. I think I'm drawn back to that video we watched at the beginning and how the daughter was sharing about her mom and being able to attend Spirit Alive with her, to engage, to kind of hold the props and to spark stories together. So she was talking about how they recalled memories from the past, but at the same time, they're creating new memories together by being in the group and being led together. Another outcome of using Spirit Alive is that residents feel safe and establish trust with each other. They often come back again and again without real prompting. It's almost like they get engaged and the 45 minutes of the group passes so quickly because it's focused on them. It's focused on where they're at and how the props reach them. And then lastly, connecting with self, with God, with other, with nature. It can be maintained and accessed. It goes back to that 4 quadrant of how we see spirituality and how we see connection, and how our role is to attend and maintain those connections to self, God, other, and nature. All right. I think the next slide is kind of our closing poll. So I'm ready to hear from you. Has this webinar and discussion on Spirit Alive provided any new insight or perspective for you in your ministry? So I know these questions are very yes or no, but I'm hoping in the question and answer, I'm hoping there's plenty of questions that are not just multiple choice or yes or no.
So Emily, while people are doing that survey, I just wanted to let you know that we have a question. Someone asked if family members are attending, does it increase noise, commotion, or does it change the environment?
It can't, like, I'm thinking about the most recent time where a family member attended, and it, like, the family member was aware of what Spirit Alive was and had seen it done, so they kind of knew to the routine. But what I noticed was that when the resident wasn't able to maybe remember something, we were able to hear it from the daughter. But then once the daughter shared, the mother had a very different experience of it, and so she told her story. So to answer that question, I imagine it really depends on the individual that's attending, but oftentimes it actually creates more of a robust experience that we can kind of get to know the resident, but also get to know the family too.
Thank
So
you for that.
does that answer that well?
Yes, I'm sure it did. Sure.
Okay.
Okay,
So that poll, I saw a lot of yeses. Maybe some people have also tried experimenting with things like props before. And I know there's many other formats out there like Godly Play. The difference with Spirit Alive is it is specifically focused on folks with dementia. So a lot of our training it's also a different model where we train a facility, we don't train an individual. And I think that's a little different than other programs out there.
So Emily, we have a question here. Someone's one of our participants is saying she works in an acute hospital. And how can she apply Spirit Alive techniques in an individual visit?
Yeah. I wonder if even just, so I'm thinking this through, my residency was in a hospital, and I was on the acute care setting for the elderly. And at that time, I did not have any experience with Spirit Alive. But thinking about how I engaged then and how I engage now, I think what I wish I would have done was brought in props, whether it was, and props that are appropriate for the individual. Like I wouldn't bring in Jesus to a Jewish patient, but I would bring in something that had enough of a spiritual background that they would be able to maybe tap in and share a little bit about what their experience is. So I'm thinking acute care, sometimes you only get a few like minutes, hours, maybe you get a second visit with them, but oftentimes it's just a one visit. And so maybe bringing in something that's pretty broadly spiritual and allowing that person, especially if they have dementia, to engage if that's an appropriate thing from a medical standpoint, and then see kind of how that connects to where they're at, what they're feeling in the moment, what they're feeling being in a hospital. I know routine for folks with dementia is a huge part of their life. Routine really helps them, and so being in a hospital where there is no routine might really be a stressor for them. So that would be my best advice, is having some kind of prop that can then maybe help them find comfort, expression.
Right. I might add to that if in fact you're lucky enough to get a second visit with the patient in a hospital, if you've picked up something from the first visit, to certainly dig a little deeper at the second visit, particularly with a prop or with some or with something that you've learned from there that might help that patient to express their spirituality a little bit better.
Yeah, and during COVID, we're talking about props and kind of like thinking about settings of care, especially acute care. Finding a prop that you can wipe down. During COVID, we really thought critically about our props and how we can make sure they're clean, they're not transferring anything. So that'd be another suggestion too, on top of that, Mo, is to think about a prop that might be easy to clean.
Right, sure.
Yep, so those are some references and resources from the PowerPoint. And then the next slide is some contact info. So if you are interested, I mentioned that we do training, and with COVID, we've found ways to be adaptable by using webinars, using day training. In person is usually the best because we can really experience and lead and facilitate good learning, but we have done remote training too, or we will be doing remote training. And so we are different than other organizations where we partner organization, so we don't do individual training. So if you're at a hospital or something, probably it would be important to check with like the pastoral care department and the director.
Emily, what I would ask you to do is if you could provide us with your, if you want to provide us with the whole slide deck, that's great. If not, if you just want to provide us with some resources and contact information, we'll be happy to post that up on our website along with the recording of this video.
Oh, great. I will do that. Yeah. So, yep. So I'll provide email with emails that are listed here in the phone number, so they can be
Perfect.
there.
That's great.
Awesome.
Do we have any other questions? Does anybody have anything else that they would like to comment or mention to Emily? I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the examples that you shared were understandably drawn from the Christian tradition. Have there been any efforts to develop similar programs based on other faiths?
I imagine you're asking outside of Spirit Alive.
No, I don't think that's the question. I think that this individual is asking within Spirit Alive.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Spirit Alive comes from a Christian tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any efforts to develop, to take this program and make it transportable to other faith groups? For example, okay, if you're dealing, just for example, if you're dealing, if you're dealing with an Islamic group,
Mm-hmm.
you clearly would not want to introduce things with church scenes or the like, but
Right.
you may very well want to have a different opening for people from that faith group. Even with the movie, even with that introductory movie, okay,
Yeah.
it was very Christian. If
Mhm.
you're looking to expand it out, you clearly might want to have, you just do it potentially, with a neutral religious background,
Mm-hmm.
or with individual backgrounds for other faiths. For example, okay, on your altar, instead of having the cross and the in the other items and iconry that you have, just put some flowers up there,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. And that way, it becomes, I hate to use the term, but it becomes more palatable to people from other faith groups when they see it. So, so they don't look at it and say, "Oh, wow, this is a Christian program. I'm not interested. Goodbye."
Right. From the movie. So you're talking about
I'm talking about that, but I'm talking, but with everything. Okay, I mean, to turn around and to use language, to use language. It's really non-denominational.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but the question was really, have you made any efforts? Are there any are any efforts being made to develop this program based on some other faith traditions?
Yeah. So I'm thinking right away, Mo, about our students. So our CPE students have helped in creating a variety of scripts, and we've had a CPE student who's created at least 3 or 4 scripts for us who's Jewish. Also UU member who has created scripts for us. So yeah, and then when I think about leading a group, a lot of times there is a mix of residents from different faith backgrounds.
Sure.
And so part of the training that we do is making sure the facilitators know the spiritual story of each individual, so they wouldn't be leading a group and make it in a way that's offensive or from a different tradition, so the person can't tap into the story.
It might not be even offensive. It just may be different for the person.
Yeah.
And because, if it's different, different doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that I'm not familiar with it.
And they might not be able to then tap into the story and share.
Correct.
So
Exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah. So the script development is a big part where students share, like not only students, but also chaplain staff create new scripts. So some of those scripts that were listed that I thought about in planning for this presentation are specifically from the older text, like the Hebrew text, and they are designed from Jewish perspectives. So, but beyond Christian, right? You mentioned Muslim, Mo, so that would be something that could continue to grow and advance in script development.
Sure. So there's two more comments. So one was the initial person who raises questions writes, "Thank you. I was specifically curious about the language in the scripts that you mentioned. If there is not much developed, she'd be curious to explore some options together in the future." So
Ooh,
she may be interested in helping you. Another one here
would love that.
is, do you have senior chaplains of other faith traditions that you consult? Because you could certainly go to consult with them, and that could be in addition to CPE students. So if you were looking to make the program across a wide variety of faiths, it can be done. And
Absolutely.
I think you have people here who are interested in potentially helping you.
Awesome. I would love to hear from you all who have voiced interest in participating. And absolutely, I think that's the nature of Spirit Alive, is to be adaptive, to meet those needs of the people where they are and their faith background. So yeah, so reach out. I'm gonna share with Mo our contact info, and if you're interested, reach out, and that would be wonderful.
Right, and we'll post that. Well, we'll make sure that that's posted up on the website with the recordings.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. Are there any other questions or comments or anything that anybody would like to bring forward? Okay, seeing none. Emily, it's really been wonderful. Thank you so very, very much. We're glad that you were with us, and we're really glad that you could share Spirit Alive with us. Again, we want to thank the Sephardic Foundation on Aging for their support, and we encourage anybody and everybody to come to our next session next week. Next week is going to be our last session. Thanks, folks. We appreciate everybody. Be well. Have a wonderful week.